Welcome to week 14 guide for design. We'll be working on power distribution. You a link to Drive resources on. Here's the goal for what we're going to do in these activities. We're going to create a power distribution plan for our commercial build out. Now, this will be foreign to many of you. The terms may be foreign, the style and even how electricity works might be foreign. So, in this little introduction, I'm going to go over some of that, and then I'll provide you a little bit more information that you can go look at to find out how power works and how it moves around. But if you want to get just a general idea, it's sort of like water going through pipes. Electrons flow, and voltage is sort of like pressure. The more voltage there is, the harder the electrons can flow. Just like when there's more pressure in a pipe, the harder the water can faster go in the so voltage is sort of like that. Amperage, amps, are sort of like flow rate. How fast are those electrons zipping through those wires? And it's sort of like how fast is the water zipping through the pipe, the flow rate. Um, and so then there's a new thing called power, though. That's the volts times the. That's your total capability to get stuff done with that electricity. That's a little bit of about electricity, and we'll go into more of it in a little bit. And so, just like what we did with the water, we have to figure out how to get the electricity to flow throughout the building. And it's the same way we did it with the HVAC, right? That was how did we get the air to flow throughout the building? So, this is just another similar exercise as what we've done with the HVAC and with the plumbing, but this time it's with electricity. So just as we did before, we had we had HVAC zones. We didn't really work on plumbing zones, but we had branches. And in electricity, there are power zones also. And often, each little zone has its own power panel where an electrician can go over to turn things on and off in that little zone. The power panel has these switches in it, and the switches are usually circuit breakers. And that means that if something goes wrong, it automatically detects too much current or a bad voltage and it breaks the circuit for safety so that it's almost like a valve in a water line. And so you have all these circuit breakers, panels, and we'll talk about those. But so each zone, just like each zone had an air handler in, at least for most of us, each zone had an air handler for the HVAC. Each power zone is going to have its own distribution panel. So we're going to have to figure out how to get those together. And then we have to place the loads. That's like placing air terminals in HVAC. It's like placing fixtures in plumbing. It's the things where the energy comes out. Okay, you can deliver power at that point. You can plug something in. That's like opening a faucet. The faucet for plumbing is like the electrical receptacle for power. And so you're all familiar with that. You plug your vacuum in or your light in or your computer in to some sort of receptacle, and then you get power. And then there are other things called junction boxes, and they're just not as well defined. They don't have the nice little pins for the plug or the socket for the plugs. They're literally a box that an electrician has to come over to and hook up wires individually. And then once they're all going, you have to create circuits. In plumbing, that's like having a branch line come off, right? All of those fixtures are attached to that one plumbing line. A whole bunch of receptacles get hooked up to one wire circuit. Okay, and it's very much the same in HVAC, where you have different branches that go off in a couple of different air terminals. Okay, so when we group receptacles together so they're all on one big wire circuit, um, then that's called circuits. And that's good because if something goes wrong, we want just one circuit to die, not the whole building. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. And then, of course, we're going to create some documentation sheets. We'll have some plans, some schedules, details to make it look pretty full. So let me just show you what this is going to look like. We're going to start off with having a power distribution panel plan. Okay, you have to show where the panels are going. You can see I've created 3 zones. There's admin 1, manufacturing 1, and manufacturing. And each of those is going to have a panel. So this panel here, admin 1, will take care of all this cross-hatched area. All the electricity for here will end up being hooked eventually through wires to the panel right. And I split this one in 2 because there's really 2 different types of areas. And so if one of them goes down, I want the other one to still be able to run. This could easily be done on one panel, but I wanted to make 2. So all of your lab and your testing and one of the bathrooms, that's all on one panel right over here. Okay, so all of the electricity for this area is on one panel, and then all the electricity for this one is on another panel. Now, those are not particularly big panels, but that's okay. It's just a good way to split it up. And so you're going to make a view that looks like. And then each of these panels needs to get its electricity from somewhere. Something has to feed these. Okay, just like when you have HVAC, the big air handler feeds it. And we didn't really show it, but from in the plumbing out under the street somewhere, there's a big feed of water coming in. And so we have what's called a feed or a main panel also. So each of these panels, 1, 2, admin 1, manufacturing 1, and manufacturing 2, will have big wires that hook over to the main. Okay. Now these wires are going to have to be big because that's a lot of energy that has to feed this whole panel. And then smaller wires can go out to each area where electricity is needed. Now we're just doing power distribution. We are not doing lighting or special equipment or anything like that this week. We'll do lighting next. So these panels may send electricity to other places too, but we're only dealing with what we call power distribution. That's where you're going to plug something in or wire something in and run it. Okay, so you can imagine each of these offices is going to need a couple of receptacles. The bathroom will need some receptacles, so will the hallway. There's a server in here. That's more than just a little plug. That's got a lot of power goes into a server, so that's probably going to be a junction box that gets wired in solid. Okay? Over here, this mill will need a power of its own. Lathe will need power of its own. So this panel here is going to have wires that go to the lathe, to the mill, to the computers, to the air compressor. Okay, so there will be smaller wires that go. That's sort of how how it's set up. And if you look over here, I've got something called the system browser. I guess that's get any. And I can look at my electrical systems here, and it says, oh, I've got a power circuit. See. And I've got something called DTL, the Design Tech Lab main. And if I click on it, it kind of shows it right away. That's highlighted. That's kind of cool. And it even tells me some stuff. It tells me that it's the 208 volt and there's 40,920 volt amps. So we'll talk about that in a little while. And hooked into this one power panel, I've got 3 power panels. Okay, I've got 3 circuits. And each of those circuits goes to a power panel. So I've got a circuit that goes to admin 1. I've got a circuit that goes to manufacturing. I've got a circuit that goes to the power panel. So when we read this system browser, it tells us how our power flows. It comes from our main, and then there's 3 circuits attached to the main, and each one of those circuits goes to another panel board. If I want to find out what's going on in there, I go, oh, look, I've got all these other circuits. And there's circuit breakers in there. And this one happens to hook up to circuit 1 and 3. And if you've done some electrical, you know that that's because it's a 208. So that goes across 2 of the legs, whereas your 110 goes from ground 1 leg. Okay, but there's circuit breakers inside that panel. And it tells me that on circuit breakers 1 and 3, I'm going to connect 2 junction boxes. And on circuit breaker number 2, I'm going to put 1, 2, 7, 8 of these little ones. So if I come over here, you can see which ones I've got. See how I can see? Isn't that cool? I can look and see what's wired into where using Revit. That is really, really nice. So it helps me keep track, and it helps me know what voltage I'm using. I can't mix voltages on one circuit, but I can mix voltages on the power panel. And if you understand a little bit about electricity and how the legs are attached and how the electricity flows, you can know that on this particular power panel, it works in such a way that I can get 208 or 120 volt. Okay? And I've picked panels for you and receptacles for you that work. Revit will not let you mix and match incorrectly. And if you're not an electrician, that can get pretty confusing. And the purpose of our week here is not to make you into electricians, but to make it so that you have a little bit of skill in doing the basic drawings if you need to. You would be getting all of this information from somebody as so. But that's how it's going to be. So you're going to need to be able to use the system browser to figure out how the energy flows. It flows from the big main panel to a sub panel and through circuits to different receptacles as cool. There we go. So that's sort of what we're going to do. Now, our goal is to make a plan view, a set of plans. So we're going to have one sheet that has 4 views. Sort of the overall, where do the panels all go? And then the admin, um, area 1 and area 2 for the manufacturing. And then on another one, we're going to have a couple of schedules. Tell us, what's hooked up and where, what's on each one. And then, we'll have also a circuit schedule. And then on this page, you'll fill up the rest of it with details. And we have plenty of details to show you. And I'll go over that in another one. So let's take a look at our whole package of what we're going to do here. We're going to make power zones and place those distribution panels. Then we'll place the loads. That's the receptacles and junction boxes. And we'll hook those all together into different circuits. And then, of course, we'll create the document sheets as we go. So there it is. That's the overview of what we're going to do. And I'll be doing some very specific demonstrations for you, which you can just follow along. If you know electrical already, it's a lot easier. Don't worry about it if you don't. Do your best to mimic what I do. And if you run into working with an electrical place, you'll have some skills and they will teach you all the electrical that you'll need